Why do some people master a skill with effortless grace, while the rest of us just struggle? You've seen them. The programmer who writes elegant code like poetry. The musician whose fingers just dance across the fretboard. We call them gifted. Geniuses. We tell ourselves they were born with something we weren't. But that's a lie we tell ourselves to excuse our own lack of progress. We live in an age of hacks and get-skilled-quick schemes, drowning in information but starving for wisdom. Our progress stalls, we feel like imposters, and we wonder if we're just not good enough. The problem isn't you. The problem is the path you're on. You've been sold a modern map that leads nowhere. What if I told you there's another way? A 1,000-year-old method, forged by ancient samurai and Zen masters, that flips this entire modern philosophy on its head. A method so powerful, yet so contrary to our instincts, that it's been almost forgotten. It doesn't promise a shortcut. It promises a path. A path that starts not with self-expression, but with the complete and total death of the ego. This is the secret to true mastery, a three-step journey known as Shuhari. And the first step is the one 99% of people are unwilling to take. Young Kaido dreamed of being the Empire's greatest swordsmith, but his blades, while technically proficient, had no soul. Frustrated after shattering another failed creation, he heard whispers of a master in the mountains, a man named Kenji whose blades were said to forge destiny. Desperate, Kaido made the brutal journey, his mind rehearsing the advanced theories he would use to prove his worth. He found Kenji in a humble, open-air forge. Kaido presented his finest sword, boasting, "Master, I've studied the 17 forms of tempering and the 32 folding techniques." Kenji didn't even glance at the sword. He just picked up a rough wooden stick. "Your knowledge is a heavy burden," the master said quietly. "It fills your mind, leaving no room for understanding. You haven't come here to learn. You've come here to be right. And that is why you will always fail." He gestured to a large, water-filled basin. "Your task is this," Kenji said. "For 1 month, you will do nothing but fill this basin. When it's full, you will empty it. Then you will fill it again. You will not ask questions. You will not offer theories. You will only carry the water." Kaido was stunned. "But, Master," he stammered, "what does this have to do with forging a blade?" Kenji's calm eyes met his. "Your ego is the impurity in your steel. It makes you brittle. Before you can learn to make a sword, you must first learn to be an empty vessel. This is the first step. This is the stage of Shu. To obey. To protect. To follow. You will do this, or you will leave." And so, Kaido's journey into mastery began. Not with the fire of the forge, but with the cold, clear water of humility. The first week was torture for Kaido. Every part of him screamed in protest. He, a scholar of the blade, was reduced to manual labor. He filled the bucket, his back aching, his hands blistering. He poured the water, emptied the basin, and started over. His mind was a rebellion. "This is pointless," his ego whispered. "The old man's a fraud. He doesn't see my potential." He would watch Kenji at the forge, the master's movements so fluid, a dance of fire and steel. Kenji never looked at him. There was only the endless task. By the second week, his arrogance curdled into despair. He tried to optimize the process, building a longer trough to carry more water, but it was clumsy and spilled, costing him time. He wasn't just failing at the task, he was failing at outsmarting it. One rainy afternoon, Kaido slumped beside the basin, defeated. "I can't do this," he told the old master. "It's meaningless." Kenji put his cup down. "You think the task is to fill the basin. The task is to obey the task. You are fighting the water. You are fighting the path. But mostly, you are fighting yourself." He pointed at Kaido's hands. "Your blisters aren't from the work. They are from your resistance." The words hit Kaido like a hammer. He had been so focused on the outcome that he'd paid zero attention to the process. That day, the hard shell of his pride broke. He went back to the stream, leaving his theories behind. He focused only on the bucket, the feel of the handle, the shift of his weight, the sound of his feet. The task didn't change. But he did. This is the essence of Shu. It means to obey or to protect. In this stage, the student dedicates themselves to flawlessly imitating the master, following teachings precisely without deviation. This isn't mindless mimicry, it's profound absorption. The goal is to internalize the fundamentals so deeply they become as natural as breathing. The modern mind hates this. We're taught to think outside the box from day one. But you have to build the box before you can think outside of it. The Shu stage is building that box. Trying to innovate without a deep understanding of the fundamentals is like trying to write a symphony when you don't know the scales. The result isn't originality, it's just noise. The death of the ego is the most critical part. It's surrendering your preconceived notions and your desperate need to be seen as special. In Zen, this is called the Great Death, a necessary step to enlightenment. You have to become an empty cup before you can be filled. For the next 2 months, Kaido's life was a moving meditation. After the water, Kenji gave him new tasks, sweeping the forge in a precise pattern, tending the fire, sorting charcoal, polishing finished blades. Through it all, the master was a silent observer, offering no praise, only a sharp again if a movement was careless. Kaido stopped seeking approval and started finding satisfaction in the perfect execution of the task itself. One morning, Kaido was polishing a finished blade, his movements now as fluid and unconscious as Kenji's. He looked up and saw Kenji watching him. "The water is in the steel," the master said quietly. "You are ready." Kaido felt a quiet readiness. The cup was empty. The Shu stage was complete. His ego had died, and in its place, a true student was born. Kenji led Kaido to the forge and handed him a hammer. "Watch," was all he said. Kaido watched as Kenji selected the steel, folded it, hammered it, and quenched it, a blur of practiced perfection. Now, Kaido saw with new eyes. He saw the why behind the what. He understood that the precise hammer angle distributed carbon evenly and that the sweeping pattern kept dangerous embers from straying. Every tedious task he had endured was a single letter in the alphabet of mastery. For the next year, Kaido continued in Shu, copying the master's forging process. He ruined piece after piece of steel. Each time he failed, Kenji would simply say, "Again." The new Kaido didn't despair. He trusted the process. Gradually, his movements became refined. He could now create a blade nearly indistinguishable from Kenji's. It was at this point that the second stage began, the stage of Ha. Ha means to detach or to break. Having mastered the traditional forms, the student now begins to innovate. This isn't rebellion, but divergence born of deep understanding. You don't break the rules for the sake of breaking them, you break them because you now understand the principles that gave birth to them. In Shu, you learn the what. In Ha, you start asking why. And what if? One day, Kaido was working on a blade for a general known for his lightning-fast attacks. He had followed all of Kenji's steps perfectly, yet he felt something was off. Kenji's style created a blade balanced for power, not speed. The form was perfect, but the principle was misaligned with the purpose. The next morning, he approached the master. "Sensei," he said, respectful but firm. "The general's style is speed. Our blade's balance is for power. I believe if I alter the weight distribution, I can create a faster sword." Kenji looked at him, his expression unreadable. Finally, he nodded slowly. "The form protects the principle," he said. "But the principle is not a prisoner of the form. The water takes the shape of its vessel. If the vessel changes, so must the water. Show me." With the master's blessing, Kaido began to break the rules. He adjusted his hammering technique and changed the angle of the blade as it entered the water. His first attempt failed. His second cracked. But this wasn't arrogant frustration, it was the enlightening frustration of a difficult problem. He was gathering data. He spent weeks deconstructing the master's teachings and reassembling them in a new way. Finally, he succeeded. He pulled a blade from the final polish. It felt entirely different. Lighter, with the balance point shifted toward the hilt. It wasn't a copy. It was something new. He brought the sword to the master. Kenji took it, swung it through the air, and a high, hungry whistle followed. A rare, genuine smile touched his lips. "You have stopped copying my words," he said. "Now, you are starting to write your own poetry." Kaido had broken the form. And in doing so, he had found his own voice in the steel. The Ha stage transformed him from a perfect student into a true artist. Years passed. Kaido's name was now spoken with the same reverence as his master's. He had explored the Ha stage to its fullest, developing a style that was uniquely his. He was a master, but he hadn't reached the final stage. The third stage is Ri, which means to leave or to transcend. This is the most misunderstood stage. In Ri, you no longer need the techniques or the rules. The art flows through you with spontaneous, perfect intuition. You don't do the art. You become the art. Kaido reached this stage not in a flash of discovery, but in the quiet of his work. An urgent messenger arrived. A notorious bandit was terrorizing the northern provinces, and the local lord needed a special weapon in an impossible timeframe. The old Kaido would have panicked. The Ha-stage Kaido would have begun an analytical process of design. This Kaido did none of that. He simply stood in his forge, closed his eyes, and breathed. He didn't think about hammering patterns or quenching temperatures. He just held the image in his mind, the giant bandit, the brutal axe, the desperate lord. When he opened his eyes, there was no plan. Only a quiet certainty. He moved to the fire, his body acting without conscious thought. His hammering rhythm was unlike any he'd used before. He quenched the blade not in water or oil, but in a mixture of snow and pine resin he seemed to create on pure instinct. He wasn't following a map, he was the map. When he was finished, he held a blade unlike any other, a perfect fusion of power and grace, an axe and a sword, an answer to a question that had never been asked. The blade was sent off, and the stories that came back were legendary. The bandit was defeated, his crude axe shattered. When Kaido saw Kenji again, the old man was sitting by the same stream. Kaido bowed low. "I broke the forms, sensei," Kaido said. "I don't even know what I did. It just happened." Kenji looked at his former student, his eyes full of a deep, peaceful light. When you are learning, the form is everything. When you are experimenting, the principle is everything. But when you are a master, the form disappears. The principle disappears. There is only you and the steel. You have finally left me. You have finally left yourself. You no longer need to walk the path. You are the path. This is Ri. The state of legendary swordsman Miyamoto Musashi, who said his teachings came from a place of emptiness. The state of the jazz musician who leaves the sheet music behind and just plays. You've left the master and the conscious, striving self. You've become one with your art. The story of Kaido isn't just an allegory. It's a roadmap our world has forgotten in its rush for shortcuts, Shuhari. To obey, to break, to transcend. Look at any skill you want to master. In programming, Shu is copying tutorials perfectly. Ha is refactoring that code to build your own solutions. Ri is solving a complex problem with a few lines of elegant code no one else imagined. In music, Shu is the endless practice of scales and perfectly copying your idols. Ha is when you start to improvise and write your own songs. Ri is the musician who walks on stage and simply plays, their instrument an extension of their soul. This path isn't easy. The Shu stage, the death of the ego, is a profound act of humility our culture rejects. We're tempted to be the creative beginner, but that's a trap that leads to permanent mediocrity. If you feel stuck, it's likely because you've tried to jump straight to Ha or Ri, mistaking ego for originality. True mastery begins with the humility to follow, to perfectly copy a master. Only then do you earn the right to break the rules, and eventually, to transcend them. Here is our challenge to you. Choose one skill. Find your master, a person, a book, a single, focused course. And for the next 90 days, commit to Shu. Commit to being a true beginner. Copy, imitate, and absorb without deviation. Quiet the voice that says, I know better. Do the boring work. Carry the water. Sweep the floor. The path to mastery is long, but it's the only one that leads to true fulfillment. What skill will you choose? Let us know in the comments. Your journey starts now.